Hello, Scream Demons, and welcome to the Screams from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey.
This is the scariest horror podcast on this side of the Black Lagoon.
Lagoon?
Screams from the Basement discusses the best double features the genre has to offer.
We also interview the industry's finest that make our screams become nightmares. I am one of your creepy co-hosts. I'm Casey.
And I'm Sam, and let's get screaming.
Let's get screaming as we jump into this episode's double feature, in which we're talking two of the Thing movies. We're talking the 1950s version and the 1980s remake of The Thing.
Yep, 2011 prequel, sequel, whatever, people. You're going to have to wait for that episode. We're not covering it on this one.
We're not covering it on this one until we do the sequel remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with that one. I don't know. That's just a random double feature idea.
Why not the Wolf Man? Let's do the Wolf.
No,
Man.
the shitty Texas Chainsaw Massacre that you like, the Do Your Thing Cuz one.
Oh yeah, no, that one. Okay, never mind. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw 3D. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the 2003 one. I'm like, no, that's just bullshit. That's just Michael Bay bullshit.
All right, internet, let Sam have it. Are you 03 Texas Chainsaw Massacre or 2013?
2013.
Oh.
Texas Chainsaw 3D is a better movie in every way than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03.
Well, we will all disagree. I don't know. Let us know out there, peeps. Let us know.
You think the 03 one is better than 3D? You're fucking crazy. And that you can quote me.
Well, we're not talking Texas Chainsaw Massacre on this episode. We are talking The Thing. We're not going to. We're not. It's just not going to happen. We're done. We're done doing our thing, cuz. Okay, we're moving on to The Thing. Okay.
We're doing our episode imminent.
Sam, we're doing our thing.
We're doing our thing, cuz.
Yeah. We're talking about the 1951 The Thing from Another World and 1982's John Carpenter classic, The Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a double feature on our list for a while. We have this mysterious list that we talk about quite often on this podcast. And one of the topics that we have on there includes some 1950s sci-fi horror films and their 1980s remakes. And this is one of them. And we thought, hey, it's cold outside. I think January is the perfect time to watch The Thing. And here we are talking about the two OG Thing movies. One from Howard Hawks' production and the other from John Carpenter.
Yeah. 51 and 82. So this in all of the like big 50s sci-fi horrors that have 80s remakes, this is the only one that I hadn't seen up until this point. Like I'm pretty well versed in 50s sci-fi. I've watched a lot of random ass 50s science fiction movies, mostly due to cheap box sets that you get with all those movies. But I'd never seen the original Thing before this episode, and I know it was a first time watch for you too, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm a newbie when it comes to those 50s atomic age horror movies. They're not my forte. They're not the first things I'm going to pick off the shelf for buying that $9.99 DVD bundle. And this is a first time watch for me. So let's kick things off then with the original The Thing from Another World from 1951. We'll go in chronological order. We're going to save the main event for the main event, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All right, so this one is directed by Christian Niebe, written by Charles Lederer from the John W. Campbell, Who Goes There original short story that both of these movies are based on. The Thing from Another World is set during the atomic age of horror cinema. The Thing from Another World follows a team of scientists and U.S. Air Force officials in the Arctic who uncover a UFO that contains a monster that is more than man beneath the surface. The Thing from Another World. So again, first time watch for both of us. Brief thoughts on this movie. For me, I'll be very quick because I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I took a lot of notes, but I don't have a whole lot to say about this movie. It was good. We watched both of these back to back. We watched the Carpenter film and then this one. We both agree that we
That
made
might
them
have been a mistake.
in terms of the programming of our double feature. We should have started with the original and had the thing as the main event. Hey, we're remedying that on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. I thought this is one that you would just pop on TV on like a Sunday, on a lazy Sunday, and you just sit,
Yeah.
sort of half pay attention to on the TV. You have some commercial interruptions. Maybe this is one that you're like watching while you're doing laundry or cleaning the house or something like that. It's that type of horror movie for me where it's enjoyable. You don't have to pay attention to everything, even though we probably needed to pay attention to everything because I didn't understand half the dialogue in this.
Okay, but that's yeah, yeah. So to bounce off of that, yes. I love 50 sci-fi. This one, I mean, it might have been because we watched it in the wake of a Stone Cold classic as opposed to the other way around. This one didn't do quite as much for me as some of the other 50 sci-fi ones. Like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When we get to that episode, like that's two 5-star bangers, honestly, Casey. Like those the 50s Invasion of the Body Snatchers is incredible. I can't wait to do that. This one, it's very slight, it feels like, even for a 50s monster movie. There's not a whole lot of monster in this monster movie, which I think is my biggest problem with it. Um, and like you said, some of the dialogue uses phrases and colloquialisms that we just don't use anymore and haven't for, you know, 70 years. So some of those things, like I Googled a lot during this movie
Like,
just
yeah,
to
what
be
does that
like,
what does that mean?
what
What
does
does that
that even
yeah.
mean? Yeah, yeah. And so that was a little, yeah, that took me out of it a few different times because I was like caught up on like, well, what does that even like? What is that phrase? What does that mean? Um, but that said, like I had a good time with this. Like I would still recommend this movie, especially for 50s sci-fi horror aficionados. Like it's a classic for a reason, and there's plenty of good stuff to talk about too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The first third, I think we're going to be really quick talking about because it's literally fast talking scientists and fast talking Air Force
yeah,
officials. Basically, like I said in the plot synopsis, they team up that they basically get like this distress call from the North Pole that there's, hey, something crash landed or we found something in the ice. We need to go check it out. So basically, the scientists and the military both go out to go check this out. They find that there was a UFO, a flying saucer out there,
yeah,
and they basically discover right underneath the surface there's a man frozen underneath there.
yeah, and a giant block of ice.
And so that, yeah, they
Um,
cut him out. They cut him out so they can basically unfreeze this man that's been buried underneath the ice for hundreds and hundreds of years and study him, I guess.
yeah. What's funny is like the lack of communication causes him to thaw out much quicker than they all expect. Um, I thought it was funny that they have a guy guarding him, but they don't tell him like, "Hey, this is an electric heated blanket.
Hey,
Don't
don't
throw
put a
this over
blanket
the
on this
ice block."
guy. He's already cold. You're not going to warm him up. Well, he does
Yeah,
warm him up actually,
it
but
does. It brings him to life, and that's when this movie kind of turns into a Frankenstein movie, just
yeah.
set in the Arctic, which is fun. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, looking this up again, this is a Howard Hawks production. And this movie took a lot of inspiration not just from the original source material, that short story where Carpenter's version leans more into the shape shifting aspect of it. This one does not. It's just the monster,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
definitely takes a lot from James Whale's Frankenstein, especially
Yeah.
in that second act where,
Yeah.
and again, the
And then
monsters,
the
the
creature design
creature design is
Is very
Ba-
very Boris Karloff. Like
It's
they if
basically
yeah,
Karloff without the stitches and the bolts in the neck.
yeah, yeah. And with
Uh,
long, like gnarly fingers.
yeah, and the creature, I looked this up. The creature's in this movie. Do you want to guess how long in minutes the creature is in this movie?
I'm gonna say less than 3.
Right at 3 minutes of
Really?
like roughly 3 minutes of screen time for the creature in this movie.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. There's just not a lot of creature in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's not to say like that's bad because we spend a lot of time with these characters, and I feel like on a rewatch, when I'm maybe a little more familiar with like how it plays out, maybe some of these characters will stand out to me a bit more. But to me, like a lot of these characters kind of melded together and were not as distinctive as say in the 82 one. And so it was a little difficult to like keep track of who was who. You have the 2 token women, which hey, that's something that the 82 movie doesn't have. Hooray for putting women in your movie. But I just yeah, the
I kind of
men.
forgot there was 2 women in this though. That doesn't help.
Well, okay, there's technically one woman character and then just another like kind of token blonde that's going around in the background.
Yeah.
So, um, but I do like that it's not a sausage fest and that the female character does have at least some sense of agency, which is not something you see in a lot of 50s sci-fi horrors. Um, and like I got the idea that this movie wasn't being like too self-serious. Like there's a lot of like cadence to jokes. Like we said earlier, the kind of like it sounds weird saying language barrier for a movie that's in English, but there is a little bit of at least like a generational barrier for this movie where like some of the jokes and the witticisms in the script I don't know came across to me very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of the dialogue just went completely over my head.
Yeah.
Of maybe it played well back in the 50s. I'm not sure. I wrote down all I wrote down was boner in quotation marks because I know they use that term, but it's obviously not in the way we use that phrase now in 2025 at all. I don't even remember what the context was. But basically, yeah, they have a lot of that. And again, the characters for me just don't stand out. Our leads, our male lead and our female lead that are the love interests. The guy's just guy, like bland guy.
Yeah.
Like the character that stands out to me the most, besides the thing, is Dr. Carrington, who's like the doctor that's like, you can't harm them. Like I need to study this monster before the government does, basically, before the military does. And it stood out
Yeah.
just because he has a very unique look. Obviously, it was a younger guy playing much older, but yeah, he at least stood out and had some he had some sass. He was fighting against the military. He was a fun character, and he had at least a different look to him than everyone else. Who just kind of I don't know. Everyone just kind of looked generic, and a lot of the characters were very generic and very one note. And I think that's maybe a product of the time again, especially like when you're focusing on science versus military. It's like in the 50s, how much could you play with that? I'm not sure. It was just mostly military guy and scientists trying to tell them brute force isn't always the way to go. But
Yeah.
yeah, when they bring the monster into their compound and they put an electric blanket over him, and within like an hour it like melts. That's like the warmest electric blanket in the history of man. It just melts this giant chunk of ice. Again, the
Hey.
monster kills the guy. We end up like with the monster fighting a bunch of dogs outside, which is maybe my favorite scene of this movie. Like
Yeah.
it was pretty fun. I thought we were going to get a lot more of like the monster out in the snow and they're going after him. It's
Yeah,
kind of
like
the only time he's outside, really.
at one point the monster like chucks a dog at another dog.
Yeah, like eats a dog at another one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some commentary there about the military and
Yeah.
what what is the right way to handle an alien invasion or an alien situation. Like, there's one guy that even after he's killing people that, wants to study it, and it's like, no, like, it, and so that's what I mean when I say, like, on a second watch, this might pop a little bit more when I kind of know what to expect from, like, the characters. But yeah, these military guys are just very homogenous, which maybe is the point. I don't know. You
Also,
know?
when the monster is fighting the dog, he loses an arm. And we get a great scene after that. They retrieve the arm afterwards, and then the arm like starts moving by itself. So it shows basically like the monster can rejuvenate. The monster doesn't need to have all of its limbs present. We also find out that the monster's basically again taking something from different Universal monster. He's drinking blood in this.
Yeah, he's a vampire.
Yeah. He's a vampire Frankenstein frozen monster alien
From space, yeah.
from space. Yeah. Um there's one part where they're basically explaining what the doctor wants to do with him. Once the doctor finds out that he doesn't need all of his limbs and basically the limbs can be separate and still alive, still have function from the rest of the body, he's going to clone this monster. So again, this movie's completely different. That was the one thing that really took me by surprise when comparing this to the 80s thing, is
Yeah.
that kind of becomes the A plot of the movie, is that the scientist is trying to recreate the monster and grow him in their greenhouse
Yeah. Because
using
he's made of vegetable. That's right.
yeah.
Because they like discover that the monster is made of not like it's organic material, but it's like the same type of organic material you find in vegetables,
Yeah,
which
it's
is so
basically like
interesting.
blood plasma, I think is what they call it. And so basically uses that in the severed arm and planting it to like all of these mad scientist type things to try to grow more of these alien beings. Yeah, obviously that is not in the Kurt Russell
No.
version of this movie. Um Definitely took some liberties in the story. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
it feels very much of the time. This movie feels like this would only have been made in the 50s during the atomic age, during
Mhm.
the it's not really an atomic monster, but like an unidentified flying object. UFOs were big during this
Oh
time.
yeah.
They mentioned that like the US government wants to have this. They also mentioned Russia at one point. So like Cold War thematics are still sort of present in this, not as prevalent as like some other like atomic age movies, but they're definitely there. And so that's really what caught me by surprise, is that it leaned so heavily into atomic age horror.
Yeah, yeah, it's got that same kind of paranoia that a lot of 50s horror had. Um, I mean, just the very nature of it being an alien invasion movie is very much the we're scared of outsiders mentality that was so prevalent in the 50s.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I what's weird is like I feel like Carpenter's remake of this is almost more indebted to something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the creature from space is assimilating into humanity and you don't know who it is. Whereas this one, it's like, well, we know who the creature is because he's got fucked up hands, you know?
Yeah, he's got fucked up hands. He's an alien from outer space. They found him in a spacecraft. So another atomic age thing, he puts off radiation because they can use like a detector to know where he's at and when he's getting closer, and that's basically how they defeat him in the end. It's kind of it's pretty lackluster
I mean,
how they defeat him.
that's typical
Yeah,
of I mean, yeah. Have you seen the 50s Blob?
I have not seen the 50s
Okay,
Blob, no.
same thing.
Yeah.
I love that movie. So I mean, I really love that movie. But
Yeah. They basically set like a booby trap for the monster
yeah,
and basically just electrocute him and then he dies.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's
I
it.
mean, literally, like
That's the climax.
when the end popped up on the screen, I was like, wait, what? I
That's
think
it?
we were both a little bit like, huh? Because it didn't even really feel like it had built up to that all that much either. It just kind of felt like, oh, well, this is what we're gonna do. And it felt like a plan. It felt like plan B, but I thought like, in John Carpenter's The Thing, they go from plan A to plan B to plan D to like, they go through a couple letters of the alphabet.
Yeah,
Um,
they go through everything and there's two survivors by the end of it. Here it's like
yeah,
everyone.
yeah, barely anybody dies in this
Like
movie.
I can think of like maybe on one hand how many people die in this movie. For sure the
Yeah,
guy that put a blanket on him, he's dead.
yeah. That was too funny.
But the thing that this movie leaves off on is maybe my favorite part of it is the final line of keep watching the skies. Like such a cool
Yeah,
line, such a great line. Like they know more stuff is coming. It's a great line to leave people off with of oh, well, here's something that's out there. There's definitely more out there. Just keep watching the skies for it. It's
yeah,
good stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that line a lot.
Great final line. Yeah, I can't wait to get into more of these fifth ones because that's another thing that this shares in common with the Blob. The Blob has an excellent end stinger too. These movies are so like they follow a very distinct formula. Like if you've
Yeah.
watched one 50s movie, you've kind of watched all of them. Um, but like there are little variations throughout each of them that make certain ones stand out above the others, like this one, like the Blob, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the Fly. And that's where like I think those are the ones that filmmakers gravitated to, especially in the 80s, going into, like what's a ripe 50s movie that I grew up on that I can remake. And that's I think by going back from those like 80s remakes and starting like if people are looking for a place to start in 50s atomic horror, what movies were remade in the 80s? Go back and watch those because those are like kind of the cream of the crop. And I say that as someone who is a little lukewarm on this one. Like there are definitely other ones that I would put on before this, but this one's still a damn good time with a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll get to our final thoughts because then I want to use that conversation of the 80s remakes from 50s movies as our transition to the Carpenter movie. But my final thoughts are I mean, we talked about this movie really quick. Like, there's not a whole
Yeah.
lot to digest in this movie, but it's a fun movie. Like, I would recommend it. I gave it 3 things out of 5 things. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's like my middle of the road recommendation. I
Hmm.
don't know how you can rate this any higher or any lower. Like this feels like that perfect 3-star movie of yeah, it was a fun time for 90 minutes. I got enough of the monster. It was fun, but I didn't
Yep.
get much else out of it. So I don't know. Mileage may vary, I guess, especially if you grew up on this movie and didn't watch it for the first time like us at 30 years old. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was good.
Desensitized as shit.
Yeah. What did you think of the thing from another world?
Kind of honestly same as you. I went into this with my notes, but like even my notes, it was stuff like I wrote down boner because we found out that that actually does mean a mistake. Hubie Halloween did not lie
That's
to
what it
us.
is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because we that was one of the things I Googled. I love when they like find the flying saucer. All of those scenes are really cool. I love when they're all standing around it and they're like, "It's round, it's a flying saucer," and it's like that's the only criteria for them discovering that it's a flying saucer.
yeah.
Perfect. Of course, that's what it would be in the 50s. Um, yeah, this has all the hallmarks of a good 50s sci-fi horror. Um, I think maybe if I had seen this one earlier on in my dive into this very specific era of films, I might hold it in higher regard, especially since it's from the early 50s. Like it's not even a late 50s one, like say The Blob, or a mid 50s one like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But that said, this movie had a lot going for it, and the fact that, like you said, it had that great final line. The characters are fun, at least some of them. I and it's a space Frankenstein that drinks your blood. Like that's so cool. I 100% recommend this. I also gave it 3 out of 5 things. Um, and yeah, I think if you're looking for a Sunday afternoon movie to just throw on and have a good time with, uh, you can't do much better than this, you know?
All right. Well, let's get to our first ad read of the episode, and we'll transition to John Carpenter's The Thing. But first of all, we got to talk about Fangoria. For over 40 years, Fangoria has been the leading source for all things horror. The famed magazine is back with a vengeance every quarter with new in-depth discussions on the best contemporary horror, sci-fi, and macabre. Use our affiliate link to save 20% on your annual subscription to the magazine, and that also includes back issues and the latest Fango merch in that 20%. Visit shop.fangoria.com/screams from the basement and use promo code screams from the basement at checkout to save 20%. Sam, did you get your
I
Fangoria in?
I did. I don't even have it on me yet.
Okay, then I'm going to show mine off. Just
Yeah.
I didn't want to spoil it for you.
Spoilers for Nosferatu. Yeah. Oh, what a gorgeous cover.
Great
What a
cover, like
gorgeous cover.
love it.
I
Here's
I
the
kind of
thing
want to get
though.
a newsstand one so that I can just like frame that one and put it up.
I do. I want the newsstand version. I like this one because it looks awesome. Like it's just pure black
Hmm.
besides the Nosferatu. But I want the newsstand version because Farrell from our buddy Tony Fleeks is on the
Yeah.
cover of that in one of these sidebars. I'm like, I want that because I want to represent Tony on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, with
Farrell.
Farrell. Yeah, Farrell's on the cover. So we're one of our interviews is featured in the mag. So
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool
yeah,
stuff.
super cool stuff. So if you want to pick up that version, you can buy that version now at shop.fangoria.com/screens from the basement. You get 20% off. I might do that just to get another copy of this magazine. Not gonna lie.
Mhm.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah. This is like, and reading this one, I haven't even gotten to everything yet, but just reading this issue of Fangoria, it's probably one of my favorites that they've done since the relaunch. Like
Yeah,
there
it's a
is
very,
a
very
lot of
good
good
read.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
If you were hyped by some of our like most anticipated for 2025, like this kicks off the
yeah,
season in a great way. I'm gonna throw this up one more time. Scan that
yeah,
QR code. Buy this magazine. Damn it. It's
yeah.
incredible. I've read most of the stuff out of this issue. The only stuff I haven't read is stuff I want to watch the movie first, including Hard Eyes. They have a
Yep, I
yeah.
know. I'm literally they had a thing on Companion and I
And
flipped to
Companion.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
page and
Jack Quaid
literally
was even
the
like, don't read
yeah,
this.
yeah, like literally he started off the interview with like, I just suggest people don't even read this until they've watched the movie, going as
Yeah.
blind as possible. And so I skipped that article.
All right. Well, let's get back to the thing of this episode, the thing. So
Yeah.
the transition I want to use. Okay, we talked a lot about the original, the thing from another world, and how different it is from the Carpenter version. Also, that goes with I haven't seen the Blob, but I assume the Blob is very different. Like
Yeah.
general premise is
Like
probably the same, but very
the
different
general
besides
premise
that.
is the same.
the
Like,
the Fly is very different, like going
yep.
from the 50s Fly to Cronenberg's The Fly. Very different movies. Body Snatchers is very different types of bodies, like
Yep.
body
There's
snatchers, how it all works. Like so,
yeah.
the thing I want to talk about then is this is how you do a remake. There's a reason why The Fly, The Thing, The Blob, like all of those movies that we're talking about show up on the best remakes list.
Yep.
It's because you do something maybe not completely different, but you do something that's
You
harkening back to that original version, but not a complete remake of that same story with the same characters. You're taking that general premise and adding your own unique flair to it. Because let's compare these two for a second before we transition into full-on discussion of the thing. What are the similarities between these two?
literally,
Setting?
it's a group of scientists in the Arctic. Like,
Yeah, setting and that they're scientists. Characters all different. The type
mhm.
of like what they're studying is different as well.
Yep. Yeah, like there's less military,
Yeah, there's like
like
no
less
military.
less military presence in John Carpenter's. Like it is more of a science thing. Like obviously, McCready is like an army helicopter pilot who's just been stationed to help these people. But like it's not like this is a whole military operation in the 82 thing like it was in the original one where like I
Yeah.
think a large part of that was actually military operation.
Obviously
Um
the monster is very, very different. Like
mhm.
we like the monster in the original is just a space
Space
Dracula.
Frankenstein. Yeah.
Space Dracula Frankenstein. And versus the 80s version, it's a shape-shifting dog person, all of the above
Whatever it's picked up along its thousand
along the
light
way.
year journey. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump into this then. Let's jump into how you do a remake with John Carpenter's 1982 classic, The Thing, directed by John Carpenter, written by Bill Lancaster. In John Carpenter's special effects masterpiece, a group of scientists in the frozen tundra of the Arctic are greeted by a shape shifting alien being hell bent on consuming the entire human race. The world's at stake in this one. I feel like we're gonna have to do Prince of Darkness this year because we're now on the second film. Oh, we already did not Prince of Darkness. In the Mouth of Madness,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because
We
we're on
have
the
to finish
second
out the
movie in
trilogy.
yeah in John Carpenter's unofficial trilogy.
Yeah, his Apocalypse trilogy.
Uh, yeah, and again, no themes of the apocalypse at all in that 50s version. That's for sure.
No, I mean, you could say the end hints towards something maybe apocalyptic, but like not in the way that Carpenter's does. Like there's a sense of dread and foreboding throughout this entire thing, even before the actual thing shows up.
Yeah,
Like it, you can just, yeah, I love this movie. As does, I mean, if you watch this movie and you don't love it, I don't know what to tell you. Like I really don't. What
I've
else
never
do
met
you
a
want
person
from a
who
horror
doesn't
movie?
love capital L love The Thing
Yeah, because it's just one of the best it's one of the best
movies.
movies ever made. Like not even just horror movies. It's one of the best movies ever made. And I the opening of it is so great. It's got the it kind of starts with that classic 50s sci-fi, the like spaceship coming to Earth, and then it goes to the outpost. Um and you're watching a helicopter chase a dog and trying to gun it
Shoot at the
down.
dog. Yeah,
Yeah, like which is I mean, and they're like got explosives that they're dropping, and they are just trying everything they can to kill this like seemingly normal dog. And you're already just kind of like, what the fuck is going on?
hmm
Um, Meanwhile, you're cutting back between like the mundanity of all these people who have been stuck up in the Arctic for weeks and they're already going a little crazy. Kurt Russell loses to a computer at chess and dumps his drink into it to short circuit it.
Kurt Russell McCready is just he's drunk this entire time. He's just
Yeah,
sipping whiskey this entire movie, wearing a giant Turd Ferguson hat whenever he's flying a helicopter. Yeah,
that
this
hat's the
movie,
real star.
the hat is the real star, along with Kurt Russell's beard.
Yeah,
Equal companions. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, this movie throws you right into it. You're right into the thick of things, and I know the 2011 version fills in those blanks, but I mean, 1982 is when we're talking about this movie singular. So you're
Yeah.
just thrown right into the middle of things, and that's something I love about every time I watch The Thing. And my favorite time I've ever watched it is the time we watched it at the State Theater, where it was
Yeah.
one of the first like unofficial late nights, and basically, or was
Wasn't
it a
that the
late night?
first it was the first official late night
Was
because
it?
Krampus was the unofficial late night, and
Okay.
I'm pretty
And
sure
by
The Thing was the first. That was in
titled
January. Yeah.
titled late night.
Yep.
And so yeah, we were watching it in January. Feels appropriate that we're talking about it now.
Like what?
4 years later,
3?
right? 4 years
Well,
later.
no, because they opened in December of 2020. So that would have
Yeah, so
been,
it'd have been
oh my
2021.
God,
It's
it's
2025,
2025.
Sam.
Holy shit, I'm still in 2024. Yeah,
Yeah, 4 years.
Jesus, that's
4 years
crazy.
since that night where we walked out into the setting of The Thing. By the end of the movie, it was just
Yeah.
like negative 20 degrees outside, just snowed like what when we were in the theater. It
Yeah.
was one of the best ways to ever watch this movie. So if you're gonna watch The Thing, try to schedule it during a blizzard and sub-zero temperatures. It's a great
Yep.
way to immerse yourself into this movie. But again, you're just thrown right into it where the Norwegian camp is just shooting at this dog, like you said, dropping bombs on it. We're like, what the hell is going on? One of the members of the scientist group that's out there, McCready's group, basically was like protecting the dog so they don't shoot it. He gets shot in the leg, like
Hmm.
what's going on? Who are these people? Why are they shooting at them now? And basically we find out they're trying to kill this dog so it doesn't get to that camp, so it doesn't keep spreading across
Yeah.
this camp and then eventually the world.
Yep. Yep. It's a pretty gnarly opening, and I mean, it ends with one of the guys blowing up because he drops a
It just
grenade.
blows up, like tries to throw a grenade at their group where the dog is.
Yeah. And then the other one just gets shot in the face just instantly. Like it's a bleak opening. Like it's like, oh, these people just like, I mean, one of them murdered another person.
Yeah. You're thrown right into you're in the same boat as McCready's camp of like, who are what
Yeah.
just happened? Who are these guys? Like they're dead. They're not going to answer any questions for us, obviously. We need to
Yep.
figure out what's happening. So they end up going to the camp. It's where we get McCready in the helicopter with his giant Turd Ferguson cap.
Yeah.
And again, taking that similar premise again, I guess this also goes into that where they go and investigate where the spaceship is basically. Another
Yep.
comparison, I guess, to the 50s version. They actually go
And you're
into the spaceship though.
hmm and this is like your first look at the gnarly practical effects on display. Like when they show up at the Swedish unit, there's one guy who, like this place has just been destroyed. The cold has infiltrated, like it's no longer secure. And there's a guy who has cut open his own wrists and the blood is just frozen pouring out of him. And it is one of the most disturbing practical effects I've ever seen in a movie to this day. It's like it just turns my stomach even thinking about it. Um, and
And
you
then they
get that
also
cool.
I was gonna say they also pick up another body from there that has like two faces like morphed together all gnarly.
Both of them screaming in like
Yeah.
agony and just yeah. Oh, it's so good. Like the sculpt work on that like thing corpse essentially is just wow. Wow. Just
Yeah. The special effects in this movie I think are the greatest of all time. It's
yeah.
the greatest use of special effects in movie history.
Yep. Yep.
I I can't think of anything else that would come close to it, to be honest. Like it just is the greatest use of practical effects. Of it fully immerses you into the world, it grosses you out. You're never taken out of it. Of like, oh, that's fake or that doesn't look real. It's like, no, this is gnarly special effects, and they use it again throughout the entire movie. That's within like the first 15 minutes. The two things we're talking
Mhm.
about there, where you see like the blood dripping out of the wrist, and then morphed. Two-Face body. That's just
Yep.
the beginning of it. That's just the
Yeah.
beginning of it.
Literally, there's something, there's some gore gag happening at least every 10 minutes in this movie, and it just always is one-upping itself
Mm-hmm.
until that final reveal of, like, the thing in its full form, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, like, yeah, this movie's insane.
Yeah, my favorite scene of this movie is the dog transformation. So they're back at the camp and they're
Mhm.
basically like, something's obviously wrong here. They take back the body and they're going to try to study it, basically. Wilford Brimley's going to study it.
Yeah.
Without his mustache. I always forget he's in this movie. Like that's
Yeah.
we talked about it while we were watching. I always forget he's in this movie because he doesn't have a mustache. Throws me off
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah, and it always is. It's like you're about 2 minutes into his first scene, and you're like, "Oh, shit, that's Wilford Brimley."
Yep. I'm like, he's in this movie, right? And I'm kind of looking at everyone and like, where
Yeah,
is he?
yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, he's the doctor, but he doesn't have a mustache.
Yep.
Maybe the only reason someone would give this a 4.5 out of 5. No mustache.
No Brimley mustache, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we get basically the camp has like all these dogs inside of a cage, and that's where they keep them. Whoever this guy is that's in charge of the dogs is a big dummy because he immediately takes this dog from another camp that hasn't assimilated to their dogs yet and
Yeah.
throws him in the cage with the rest of them.
Yeah.
And
But
this
not after
dog,
he's let this dog wander around the complex for most of the afternoon, which is why they tell him to, like, put him with the other dogs. And I'm like, that seems like I mean, like you said, that's a bad idea
yeah,
right out the gate.
like even if this thing wasn't a monster, this dog is probably dead because all the other dogs are going to tear him apart. So they're like, outsider, get rid of him.
Yeah.
What happens though?
Well, the opposite
Yeah,
happens
exact
because, you know,
opposite. Yeah.
the dog is an alien. Oh my God, when that moment when the dog, like, so this is one that I believe I watched this for the first time in 2020. I think the State Theater was only my second time watching this. And I went into this movie pretty blind. And I went down to my theater room. I had the Shout Factory Blu-ray. And I went down to my theater room and I popped it on. And when that dog's face just splits open, I fucking screamed. Like, I was like, what? Like, I just wasn't expecting it. I was not expecting it at all. Like, I knew something was gonna happen with the dog, but, like, its face splits open into, like, 4 folds like the fucking Demogorgon from Stranger Things, and there are just all these tendrils coming out of it, and it's just so slimy.
Slimy. So
Oh,
slimy. Yeah, and they're like
yeah.
constantly coming out and they're like capturing all the other dogs. Finally, like the crew shows up. And again, this movie doesn't waste any time. It's like, oh, they know something's really not right here. Like the dog just transformed into an alien and started eating all the other dogs.
Yeah, yeah. Oh god, it's fantastic. The dog scene is so visceral. You get the fuck, where am I going? You get the, like, after that they go out again because they're like something's going on, and that's when I think they find the UFO. That's when they go into the UFO, correct?
Uh,
Or are my notes wrong? Because there's like a matte painting there's like all these matte painting things when they show up to the UFO crash site,
yeah.
both in like the background and the foreground, and I just love that kind of filmmaking. I think it's so, like, even though you can kind of tell, especially with like the restorations, that it's a matte painting, there's something so real and lived in about it because it's like physically on screen. You know what I mean? Like, you can use all the CGI in the world and make it pitch perfect, but there's always going to be something that rings a little hollow in my head. You know? Whereas like a matte painting, for whatever reason, looks more fake, but it feels more real. And I don't know. I love that. I wish we'd go back to that.
Yeah, yeah. It's because our eyes know when something's real and when something's there, like physically
Yeah.
there. And like we can physically recognize a painting. The human eye can recognize that easier as something real and tangible versus
Hmm.
a computer effect that creates a background behind someone.
Yeah. Like it's, another 82 movie that uses matte paintings beautifully is like Blade Runner. So much of the cityscape is a painting
Yeah.
but it doesn't look like one. Like it does, but it doesn't. And I don't know. These like old school practical filmmaking techniques, when I see them pop up in newer movies, it just
Also, I
it
just
hits
love that
different.
when movies are movies and aren't afraid that they're a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's what matte paintings feel like, is like we're using tricking the human eye to believe it's real, but our
Yeah,
brain knows it's not.
because
Versus
that's what
like,
cinema is. Like
yeah,
it's a magic trick.
it's a magic trick. And I think
Yeah.
CGI has taken some of that away. I think it needs to be used obviously to
Yeah.
sparingly. But like, yeah, if we can trick the human eye into recognizing something as real versus not real that way, I think we need to. I want to see more matte paintings because matte paintings
Yeah.
rule. Like they're incredible.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, you're right. So in the opening part, they go to the Norwegian camp. Now they were at the space, the alien shuttle.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
But Blair has gone crazy on account of the diabetes and starts like
Yes.
destroying the camp. Wilford Brimley, Blair, starts destroying the helicopter, and he basically is like, "Oh shit, the world's gonna end unless we stop this thing, and the only way to stop this thing is if we all die."
Yep. And they just beat the living shit out of him. And they lock him in a little like shed out in
Shed
the
outside, yeah.
yeah, shed outside. There's like this awful, okay, it's a great shot, but it puts a bowling ball in my gut when McCready goes back to check on him and he slides open the little window and there's just a noose hanging in the foreground in front of Brimley, and you're just like, and they never even bring it up. They never talk about it. They never acknowledge the noose. It's just there, and it's like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, he's gone mad in every
yeah.
every way possible.
Oh, it's yeah, it's terrifying. Like, but the thing is he's right. Like, that's the most terrifying part is he's the only one that actually knows the only way to save the planet, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically kill us all and burn this whole place to the ground.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I love movies that set up a crazy person and then have that crazy person be 100% right. It's one of my favorite tropes and it's so very frequently or infrequently used. And I like more movies need to do that.
And then we get some more, again, like you said, there's like a gag every 10 minutes of like some sort of special effect piece happening. Like all these are iconic special effects throughout this
Yeah.
entire movie. You get like the chest, what are those things called?
Oh, the
The
defibrillators where
defibrillators, yeah, the
yeah,
defibrillators that go into the chest, and like the chest like bursts open, and like swallows his arms and like rips them
yeah.
completely off. Insane
And
special
then the
effect
head starts like coming off
coming
and
off.
melting down. It turns into the spider. Like there's the guy, the redhead with the beard who gets attacked and like they follow him out into the snow and he's just like open mouth, just with his like giant, like tendrily hands. That scene weirdly feels like maybe it's a callback to the hands of the monster in the original, does it not? Because like
Sure, yeah,
the
yeah,
monster in the
because
original had very
had
similar, like,
big hands.
long
Yeah,
finger things, yeah.
yep.
So I don't know. I'd be interested to watch a Carpenter commentary and see if he says anything on that in particular. Because
Well,
I
yeah,
know
I'm
what a
sure
big
because
fan
like
he is of that original
yeah,
movie, you know?
yeah, because the original the thing from another world is in Halloween. He references it.
Yeah.
Obviously, he made a complete remake of this.
Yeah.
The final line is in the fog. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously a big fan of that movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
We get the when the head turns into the spider, you get the iconic line of "You got to be fucking kidding,"
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is one of the greatest line deliveries of all time. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't even talked about Keith David in this. Like Keith David.
Keith
He was
David
only
is
in
incredible.
he was only in 2 Carpenter movies. And like that's a damn shame because in both of them, he fits Carpenter's vibe so fucking well. Like he can play the cynicism, but he also has like this lightness to him where like you're kind of laughing with him at certain parts. Like he's got a sense of humor, but like when shit hits the fan, like Keith David knows how to sell it. And I love that. You know,
Also, you're immediately like, don't know if you can trust this guy. He just
yeah,
has
there's
that
something a
vibe
little
of that.
shady about him.
Yeah, he's very likable and like you're like, oh, I like him. He's cool. Like he knows how dire the situation is, but there's something shady about this guy. I can't put my finger on.
Yeah, 100%.
That's present during the blood test, which is again iconic scene of the
Yeah,
movie, like where they do a blood test to see who's because basically they can tell like the thing reacts to fire, and they're like, well, we're gonna take everyone's blood sample and we're gonna warm it up with a branding iron, basically, and
yeah,
see who reacts, which person's blood reacts to it.
yeah, yeah. And this is after they've left McCready, like they leave McCready out. They cut him loose in the middle of a blizzard, and he finds his way back. And on this watch, that might be one of my favorite scenes of the movie is when he gets back in and he's just covered in snow and he's pissed, but no one trusts him because they haven't seen him for like 20 minutes. And as an audience member, even having seen it a few times, I'm like, no, I wouldn't trust that either. Like that's like you fucking check him.
DTA, don't trust anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty gnarly how quickly not only like the characters turn on each other, but how we as an audience member also don't trust anyone, like none of these people.
Yeah, like I said from the beginning, Carpenter does a great job of just throwing us into this situation, and we know as much as they know.
Yeah.
Of again, who I don't know. We didn't see McCready for those 20 minutes that they
There are
didn't.
very few times that they show you the creature taking another person. So it's used effectively when they want you to know who the creature is to build the tension. Otherwise, the tension is not knowing who the fuck has been infected or not. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love that.
So you get the blood test. You find out one of them is actually the thing, and you
Another
get again
gnarly practical effect.
gnarly practical effects of it basically like its face splits and like swat like just takes a big bite out of the dude's head.
The guy who's supposed to be flamethrowing him, yeah.
Yeah.
And his legs are just like up in the air, trying to get out. They finally light both of them on fire. And then you get, honestly, my favorite line of this whole movie, and I always forget the character's name and the actor, but it's the really tall guy, the one that shoots the Norwegian in the face in the beginning. Um, he says, you know, like, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind untying me, I'd like to not spend the rest of winter tied to this fucking couch. And he just like screams the last part, and it just
Yeah, because he's
line
sitting there. He's
reading.
tied in this chair this entire time this
He's
stuff is
right
happening
next to
around
the
him.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a
Insane.
perfect way to cap off that scene. It's just like, the the way it doesn't do like a hard cut either, it just lets you sit with that moment for a little bit and fade into black. Amazing. Like that, the blood test sequence should be taught in film schools. Like that could be a short film, all just like you take that out of the movie and it's a short film. It leaves a lot more questions than answers, but like it works
Well, yeah, even
narratively.
in this movie, it leaves a lot more questions than
Yeah.
answers. It answers one thing, like, well, okay, that guy was the thing. Doesn't mean there's not more.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, so good.
Basically, like you said, they Blair, the crazy person, was right the whole time, and so they decide to do what he was gonna do.
Yep.
Burn it. They go full Dennis Hopper and Texas Chainsaw Massacre too.
Yes.
Burn it all down.
Yep. Yep. Oh my God. And I do love this. The them being in the kind of tunnels underneath all the different buildings, setting up the dynamite. They start getting picked off one by one, like really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one
This
of the
third act
most,
is so quick.
yeah, it really is. In like in a very different way. Like there is still a build up. It's just a fast build. It's like, well, shit's hit the fan. We have to move quickly. And there's like an urgency to it that I don't necessarily think was there in the 51 version
Yeah.
going into that third act.
And also they know
Um,
that help is coming. And
yeah,
they don't want help to come because as soon as help comes, that means there's a way out of here for this thing.
yep, exactly. So they're going to kill it, even if it means killing themselves. There's an amazing like one of the final practical effects of the movie is like one of my favorites. It's the hand to the face um that tied to this fucking couch guy gets. He where like the thing just comes up and I think it's Wilford Brimley, isn't it? I think it's him at this
He's the
point.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's been taken over by it, and he just sticks his hand up into the guy's face, and like his fingers go
Or like
into the
underneath.
skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, and it kind of just like they almost become one, and then you've just got this. It cuts away to like him dragging the body away by just this like melded hand face thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah. Like almost like I don't like somehow gets under its skin. Like I don't
Yeah.
it's insane. It's an insane special effect.
It's a great special effect because it's uncanny. You're not quite
Yeah.
sure what's happening, but you get like this sensation of like, oh no, I don't like that, you know?
Yeah. And then you get the final monster that's up against McCready. We believe McCready's he's the last man standing. He's the final boss to fight the
Yep.
final boss here. And it's like this giant amalgamation of everything it's taken over in this movie and beyond. It's
Yeah.
just like it's like dogs and humans and giant teeth, and it's just this
Yep.
insane monster at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's amazing. And yeah, McCready blows up the whole fucking complex. And as he's sitting there getting ready to freeze to death, who walks out of the rubble? But fucking Keith David,
Keith
who's
David
been
Childs just shows up.
weirdly absent for most of this third act. He just went off on his own. Oh,
And it's such a great just final exchange because as an audience member, you're still questioning, okay, how is he still alive? Where is he? We know it's not McCready because McCready blew up the thing.
mm-hmm.
McCready's gonna just freeze here to death. And we see McCready like just shaking, shivering, taking that
Yep.
last little drink of
Of his whiskey.
of his whiskey, and you see his breath. Like he's like, yeah, fire's about to go out on this whole place. Then we're gonna die. And then it cuts to Keith David, who has no
Yeah.
breath in the cold, and it's like McCready knows, we as an audience know, but there's nothing we can do about it.
So it's so funny. There are a lot of people who view this as like an ambiguous ending. My reading of it has always been that Childs is infected, but like McCready knows at this point there's nothing he can do. And so like to me it's not ambiguous. It's very much a well, it fucking survived and it's going to escape
Yeah.
because that's what's going to happen. Like and that to me is so much more terrifying than it being an ambiguous, oh, which one is the thing? Because to me it's obvious, you know?
No, no,
Like
no. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think it's an ambiguous of which one of them is the thing. It's more so
but
like.
there are people that do argue that. Like
Well, there's people that argue like that. The Shining is about like the space land, like the moon
yeah,
landing. Like it's those type of
that's
people.
that's true. I sat next to a girl in Lee Winnell's Invisible Man that at the end of the movie turned to her friends and said, "So she was the killer the whole time." Like what?
You think this is an M Night Shyamalan movie? What? No, I don't think that's ambiguous. I think it can be read as an ambiguous that Keith David is the thing, which I
What?
think Carpenter was definitely going for, of like making you question, but leaving enough subtle hints of, oh yeah, he's the thing, and the end of the world's coming now because of this. Yeah, it's such a great ending and such a great Carpenter ending. One of the most, again, this movie is just one of the most iconic movies of all time. It's one of the most iconic horror films. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. Like I said, it's my favorite, and I think it's the best special effects extravaganza ever. It has one of the best endings ever. 5 out of 5. Like,
Yeah.
no notes. The thing rules.
I was worried going into this episode because and I don't know if we necessarily found any new angles on this movie, but I don't know if there's any new angles to explore. This movie has been dissected, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, how do you have a horror podcast and not at some point talk about this movie because it's incredible? So I'm glad that we actually had a pretty, I'd say, a very lively and good discussion about this for 40 whole minutes. Like that's great. I was like, God, because I don't have much to say on the 51 one. What is there to say on the 82 one that hasn't already been said? I don't know, but we said it all. Like I love this movie. It's incredible. We talked a little bit on the Alice Cooper episode, Brian Clark, about how I savor Carpenter movies, and this was one of them. This is one that I've only watched in the last couple of years because it is. It's like Carpenter is like a fine bottle of scotch. You do not just guzzle it down in one night. Like
Yeah.
you have to space it out. You have to take sips. And this is one of those sips that like I won't lie, I've probably watched this movie at least 10 times in the last 4 years because it's so good. But yeah, I love this one. Like you said, 5 out of 5, no notes. The thing.
No notes on this. 5 out of 5 things. Like, again, like you said, how do you have a horror podcast without talking about the thing?
Yeah.
It had to happen. There's just those certain horror movies that fall in that. So Sam, before we wrap up this discussion, is The Thing your favorite John Carpenter movie?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Do you think it's the best John Carpenter movie? Two different questions.
I think if you ask me on the right day, it's my favorite. I'm gonna say no to the favorite thing though. And here's why. They Live is also one of those like I savored it
Yeah.
and I there is something about that movie that is so wholly uniquely Carpenter. Like no one could make that movie except for John Carpenter. And I'm not saying that The Thing is any different than that. Like I think this is a John Carpenter movie. But I think They Live might edge this one out for like personal favorite. But I think The Thing is undoubtedly his objective best movie. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's his best movie. It's not my favorite. A
Mm-hmm.
different Kurt Russell, John Carpenter collab is mine. Big Trouble in Little
Is
China
it Big
is
Trouble?
my favorite. Yeah.
I love that movie. It's
Yeah.
we should cover that. I mean, we'll probably cover every John Carpenter movie at some point on this cast.
Yeah.
But yeah, Big Trouble in Little China is fantastic, and Kurt Russell, he nails it in that movie. He's such a buffoon. Like people who watch that movie and are like, Kurt Russell's the hero of that movie. I'm like, watch it again.
No, he's not. He's barely the sidekick. Yeah. Sam, The Thing from Another World and The Thing. We did it. Our first 50s to 80s double feature on the pod. Again, we've brought up some other ones that we got to do at some point, but yeah, a couple John Carpenter flicks in the last couple months on the pod. It's been we've been eating good with JC lately.
We have been. We we should do more of these 50s to 80s movie double features. And with that, maybe dip our toes into some other like icons of 80s horror, talking maybe Cronenberg. Especially because Cronenberg is still a little bit of a blind spot for me. I've not watched a ton of his, but I like everything that I've seen from him. Haven't seen. No, wait, that's Lynch. Never mind. I was gonna throw shade at the 80s dude because everybody does, but that was Lynch. Never mind.
Wrong David.
Wrong David.
All right, so, Sam. Who do we got to hear from next?
Well, our next ad read is for Turp Boys. Are you looking for that extra buzz while watching Texas Chainsaw 3D do your thing, cuz? How about
it's the only way to watch Texas Chainsaw 3D.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but that doesn't mean it's not awesome. How about melting your mind while watching a David Cronenberg movie? Well, Turp Boys Delta 8, 9, THCA gummies, vapes, chocolates, and more has you covered. This is a plant-based product that is made from the purest organic hemp-based extracts and is backed by third-party laboratories. If you're looking for a fun time, just mellowing out with a good movie, I guess it doesn't have to be horror, but it should be because you're listening to a horror podcast. This is your life now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, check out some Turp Boys. Get some of their chocolates, get some of their gummies. They got some vapes. You can use our affiliate link, buyturpboys.com/screamsfromthebasementpod, or you can scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen if you're watching this. And you can use the promo code screamsfromthebasementpod at checkout to save 10% on your order. Thanks, Turp Boys.
Thanks, Turp Boys.
All right, Casey. It's time for that moment of the show where everybody probably tunes out.
They've all left. They're like, all right, Turp Boys ad, we're out. We're out. But for those who have stuck around, we got some good stuff to talk about yet.
Mostly Casey, who has a fucking laundry list.
Hey, I'll let you ask the question, then I'll go.
What have you been doobie doing?
So we took off doobie doing last time because we thought it was going to be a much longer episode, but turned out to be a pretty decent sized one, just straight up like a 90-minute episode on our top 10 horror films of 2024. So we left doobie doing off that. So I'm playing catch up for Christmas movies that I've watched, new horror movies for potentially to be on the best of the year list, and then just some other random ones in here. So I'm gonna just start going through stuff. Start with the Christmas movies because those are the older ones that I've watched. Making my way through the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies. Watched Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 and Silent Night, Deadly Night 4. So watched 3 and 4. Yeah, I thought both of these movies were pretty fun. The third one has some connections to the first two movies, versus the fourth one, which is just a completely batshit insane Brian Usna movie that is sort of a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. The third one, though, Bill Moseley takes over for Ricky, who was the Garbage Day guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Looks nothing like this guy. But basically, Ricky's brain is now in this, like, he has, like, this glass container around his head, and his brain is in this, like, goop. And he has like this psychic connection with this blind woman, and he's like chasing after her. And this movie is just, again, like I said, is just completely insane. Like, if you thought the first two movies were kind of maybe little mundane slasher movies with like killer Santa Clauses, wait till you get to these sequels, because these are gonzo insane. Bill Moseley is
Oh yeah.
doing some weird performance in this where he's like this, again, barely has a brain. Weird, very weird movie. And then 4, like I said, is Brian used a movie with some screaming Mad George special effects in
Yeah.
it. Like I said, it's barely a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. Like, it's not about a killer Santa Claus. It's set during Christmas, and like has like this witch coven that is trying to convert this woman, and they like worship like a bunch of like giant slugs. So there's a lot of like goopy slug monster creatures throughout this whole movie. What you expect from a Brian Usna Screaming Mad George flick. It is, yeah, it might be my favorite Silent Night Deadly Night movie, but it has
That
nothing to do
rules.
with Killer Santas. So yeah, I recommend those. I'm leaving Silent Night Deadly Night 5, starring Mickey Rooney, for next Christmas. That'll be my last one. And I haven't seen
Mickey
the remake.
Rooney.
What?
Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney.
Like child star
Like,
Mickey Rooney.
yes, Mickey Rooney.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Did not know that he was in 5.
he is.
That's insane.
Another older one I watched. I won't say much on this. Megan is Missing, from like 2008, something like that. 2011.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. 2011. Yeah, this not good. did not like this movie. It's like trending on like TikTok, and I blame this movie for getting TikTok banned now. Like, people recommended this, and now they're getting rid of the app. Don't blame them.
If that's not a distinct non-recommendation, I don't know what is.
And then I have some newer ones I'll throw out here that did not make my list for best of 2024. Werewolves, which is the Frank Grillo action werewolf movie. It's basically The Purge with werewolves. So if that's your jam, check it out.
Yeah,
Tons of cool like practical effects. It's fun. It's a fun movie. Don't expect anything more out of this than, like I said, The Purge with werewolves. Scrolling through here, Daddy's Head, which is a Shudder movie. It's pretty good. It's about like this woman and her stepson trying to get along and basically be a family after the son's father, her husband, dies. Okay. So basically, the son believes that he's still seeing dad's head in the vents of the house. He's seeing him out in the woods, and just the dad's head.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah. So it's a creepy premise. It's
yeah. I've heard this is good. Yeah.
It's a good movie. Some fun scares. The characters are kind of dumb, and like the emotional stakes doesn't really work, but the scares are really what makes this movie stand out.
Oh yeah.
Going to another 2024 movie that we both watched in theaters, The Devil's Bath, which is set during the 1700s. Again, a movie that is definitely a horror movie. Ooh. Based on real life horrors of basically these women who were suffering from depression during the 1750s would kill a child more often than not, or another adult.
Suicide by proxy.
Suicide by proxy. We can't say that word on YouTube. We just did, but
whoops. Sorry.
We're fine. We're not monetized not going to be if we keep saying stuff like this either. Who cares? Like, you should be able to say that word when you're talking about a movie. Anyway.
Oh, shit.
Anyway, and basically, yeah, you would your sins would be absolved for murder, where they wouldn't be absolved if you had just committed suicide.
Yeah.
And so basically, these women would kill children or other adults to not be damned to hell but would take someone out, like take someone else's life to do so. Insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and this movie literally just follows like, it has one of the best cold opens that I've seen in any movie ever. Like, it is like, in the first 3 minutes, this movie does something that you're like, "What?" And it does it in a way that's not even, like, without spoiling it,
It
it's not
doesn't
like,
feel
oh, it
exploitative or
doesn't,
anything like that. It's just, oh my
but it
god,
also
that
doesn't
just
cut
happened.
away either. Like, you see something happen that you're like, "What the fuck?" And then the movie just, like, kind of starts over with this different person, and you can just, and I mean, it basically follows that template of what we just laid out as, like, what was happening back then. And the confession scene to me is the most horrific part of the entire movie, where she gets absolved from her sins and she's just, like, sobbing tears of delight and ecstasy after she's done something, no spoilers, but she's done something really fucking heinous. Like, this movie floored me. I say I loved it because, like, holy shit, it's dark, and I didn't have, like, fun with it, but Jesus Christ. It, like,
No, you
I
can't. You can't. You can't have fun with the Devil's Bath.
but, I've been, and I know that I've said, like, 2024 was a really good year for horror. But one thing that 2024 didn't quite give me was a horror movie that got under my skin and just fucking sat there for a while. And The Devil's Bath did that. Like, I haven't really stopped thinking about this movie since we watched it. Like, it's gnarly, and it's very well acted, very well directed. Um, there's a dark comedy in there somewhere where you could mine some stuff for laughs, but I also just have a really twisted sense of humor.
It's just because you needed a laugh during this movie. It's just because you needed one. Yeah, there's so much to dissect in this movie. We didn't like her husband is another character that just
Oh,
has
yeah.
so much underneath the surface. Yeah, highly recommend the Devil's Bath. It's from the same team that did Good Night Mommy and The Lodge. So again, if you know
Yeah.
the tone of those two projects, you know what you're in for.
Yep.
I finally caught the 2020 Shutter movie. Speaking of Shutter movies, the State Theater in Sioux Falls has been starting a Shutter series at the
Yeah.
theater, and the first one was The Devil's Bath. We have Dark Match coming up
Yeah.
at the end of the month at the State
And we'll
Theater.
both be there, so we hope to see all of you there too.
Yeah, come to Dark Match. Bring your wrestling gear and watch Chris Jericho play a shady promoter. But I caught up on a 2020 Shutter movie, Scare Me from Josh Rubin. Finally caught this. I thought this was so much fun. I had an
Yeah.
absolute blast with this movie. It felt like those nights where you're swapping scary stories with friends. It feels like the creative process as well of like, here's your gem of an idea, your germ of an idea, and basically you and a friend are expounding upon that and making and creating an entire story from that. Both of the leads are incredible. Chris Red's a ton of fun when he shows up in the movie.
Yeah.
Highly recommend Scare Me if you're behind on the Josh Rubin train. I'm definitely going to watch Werewolves Within before Hard Eyes comes out as well,
Yeah.
because I
Um,
love him as an actor already, and so
because Wounded Fawn, right? He's the lead in that.
he's the lead in
Yeah.
Wounded Fawn. Yeah,
Yeah. So one of the things that I loved about Scare Me is the sound design. Like, I love how he brings in, like, sound effects, like, that
while they're
are,
telling the story. Yeah,
yeah, like, I don't know. There's some really cool, like, there's just some really cool independent filmmaking techniques on display in that movie. And it's really a good movie to watch if you wanna see how to maximize your movie, even if you have literally 3 actors and 1 location. Like,
yeah,
it's, yeah.
yeah. Should be, and I think many indie filmmakers have looked at that movie as something to study of. This is
Oh,
what you do
yeah.
with a limited budget, limited location, limited actors.
Yep.
I caught the 1997 anthology movie that finally hit streaming for the first time ever. I don't even know if this has a DVD release. I had the VHS copy. I
That's
just have
right.
never popped it in, but it's definitely going to be a VHS watch for me going forward. It is 1997's Campfire Tales, which is basically a bunch of urban legend stories about these kids who are swapping these stories at a bonfire. The cast of this is insane for the time. So you got James Marsden, Amy Smart. You also have Ron Livingston and Christine Taylor in this movie.
Holy shit, that is a
Yeah.
pretty stacked cast.
You also have Christopher Masterson. I forgot he was in this for a second.
Oh, okay.
Who's the brother in Malcolm in the Middle and Scary Movie
Yeah, that's
2, and
right.
yeah, whose brother is a terrible person in real life. Anyway,
Yep.
this movie, it's a ton of fun. It like I said, takes those like urban legend stories of like the lover's lane story of like the hook on the back of the car. It has one of my favorites of like humans can lick too, if you know that urban legend story. That's the middle section of this. It's incredible. Loved it. It's the best version I've ever seen of that story put to screen. It's so good. I loved this movie. If you love Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark type 90s television shows, but you want a more adult version of that with like basically it combines like Scream with Are You Afraid of the Dark. And if that sounds like your jam, highly recommend Campfire Tales. I believe it's on Amazon Prime and Tubi right now.
Nice.
Next up, this was Sam's number one movie of 2024, a number one horror movie at least. I assume it's probably your number one movie in
Yeah,
general.
it's my number one movie. I love this one.
I saw the TV Glow. I won't say too much because this was, I mean, Sam talked about it at nauseum last time because it's his number one movie of the year. I saw the TV Glow. I wouldn't consider it a horror movie. It wouldn't have made my list. So I'm glad I watched this afterwards because I felt zero pressure watching it this way.
Yeah. So that's part of like, I know you were talking about wanting to watch it before the year end, and I'm like, I figured you would like it. I was like, I don't think it's gonna make his list though. Like, and part of it is like I've heard from a lot of people that like they don't consider it a horror. I have a rebuttal to that I'm not going to waste time with, but
yeah,
you know,
and I told you before the show, if
yeah,
someone considers this a horror movie, I'm not going to argue it because
right, yeah,
it has those elements. But for me, it would just wasn't. I guess I don't know.
yeah.
It's a great emotional like character study and bit of an existential study as well.
Justice Smith,
Still don't love,
but he's really good in this.
He's good in it.
Okay, I'll take it. I will take it. Okay.
I have as long as Sam has known me, I've been a Justice Smith hater. Definitely his best performance that I've seen from him.
I mean, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. The 90s, early 2000s nostalgia was great. I want to watch all of the Pink Opaque now. Like I would watch that entire show.
That show seems like it kind of fucks, doesn't it? Like
yeah, I would is it Buffy? Is it Buffy that they're playing off of?
Yeah, I mean that's like the font. Like when you see like the credits on the screen and stuff, they literally are using the Buffy font. She talks about, or Jane Schoenbrunn talks a little bit about some other ones. I'm trying to think of some like there are some deep pulls that they pull from, like that I don't remember. But also, you and I there are like 90s kids who grew up in the early 90s, and then there are the 90s kids like us who we were like what 6 7 years old when the millennium hit, and so
we caught the
like,
tail end of the 90s.
yeah, so there's a little bit of that like early 90s stuff I feel like that I didn't quite pick up on, but even with that, like I thought, I don't know, visually I think it's the best movie of the year. Like holy shit, like you talk about practical effects, you talk about like old school filmmaking techniques. There's some like George. Sorry, I derailed your. Fuck it. I love this movie. I'm glad you liked it.
I liked it. I will definitely watch it. I look like I'm in. I saw the TV
You
logo right
do.
now.
You've got the color scheme down.
I got the T. I'm watching the Pink Opaque right now. Yeah, I like this movie. Again, like I said, wouldn't make my top 10 list. It is something I would like to cover on the podcast, though, at some time, especially since I do want to catch We're All Going to the World's Fair, too. I have not watched that yet.
Me too. That would be a first time one. That would be a good double feature to
Yeah.
do at some point this year because I haven't watched that either, and I've been itching to since I saw TV Glow.
Mm-hmm. A movie that might have made my top 10 had I watched this before is Joko Anwar's Grave Torture, which is on Netflix right now. It's basically 2/3 like a religious drama in the beginning, where it's like basically grave torture is what happens when you die, is that if you're a bad person, you're going to be like tortured in your grave, like physically tortured. You're going to feel like you're in hell before the end times even come. Like you're just going to be in this constant state of torture. And basically this woman's trying to prove if that's real or fake. Like she had this experience where her parents died. Like she watched her parents die via suicide bomber. And basically the suicide bomber went out that way because he didn't basically like he didn't want to be tortured forever, like to be buried and tortured forever. So he decided to suicide bomb and blow himself up. So there was nothing left of him. So he couldn't be buried. And her parents were caught in the crossfires of that. So basically it's her trying to discover how real, how fake this is. And she ends up going to like this school with her brother that's like for homeless children, and it's ran by this like millionaire good-hearted person who owns this school but definitely has a shady side to it, and takes many of the boys from the school to his home on the school compound. And
yikes.
yeah, so it deals a lot like with like heavy subject matter like that of like what happens after death. Suicide bombers, child molesters. So a lot of heavy stuff. And then the third act gets into like what you expect from Joko Anwar Indonesian horror of just batshit insanity in the third act of it's just like this nightmarish imagery.
Joko Anwar, what other movies has he done?
He did Satan's Slaves 1 and 2,
That's
right. and Pentagore.
So okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I'd heard the name before. I just couldn't remember from what.
Yeah, I love Asian or Indonesian horror. Like we totally need to do an episode on that because that's arguably some of the scariest stuff that comes out nowadays. I think this might be the weakest of Anwar's movies, but like I'll watch anything that guy makes. I know he has a show on Netflix right now. I need to pop on, but yeah, I highly recommend Grave Torture. There's just a certain sensibility about these Indonesian horror films that just really isn't matched in American cinema in horror nowadays. Last two things. I know one of these is a crossover with you. We both had a chance to watch a early copy of Round the Decay, which is a brand new horror film coming to theaters later this month. We have an interview with the writer-director Adam Newman coming out next Friday, so be on the lookout for that. But again, Round the Decay is pumpkin. I've heard him say it's Pumpkinhead meets The Descent. And that definitely feels like the vibe of this movie. We go way in depth with Adam on the interview. Highly recommend it if it is playing anywhere near you at the end of the month. Be on the lookout for that. Go to Fandango and check out if it's screening anywhere near you. Definitely, me and Sam both said it's that classic like Friday night rental movie. So if that's your jam, go find a theater on Friday night, opening night at 10 o'clock, and go check it out.
It's a fun popcorn flick. Like there's some gnarly creature effects. Round the Decay rules. We talked about it at length, and then honestly, after we stopped recording, we kept talking with the director after We kept talking with Adam Newman after we hit the end record button. We'll definitely have him back on as a guest in some capacity on this show.
Yeah.
And yeah, we like if you want a fun creature horror movie, Round the Decay, support indie films, people. It's a lot of fun and it's worth your time.
Yeah, if you liked the Eric Bloomquist movies, if you remember our interview with Eric Bloomquist from Founders Day, he also did 10 Minutes to Midnight, and she
came from
the
the
woods. So if you're into that, it has that same sensibilities as those movies. So if those are your jam, definitely seek out Round the Decay at the end of the month.
Yep.
And the last one I'll throw out here, it's one we'll probably talk about if we end up. Are we going to do that as our Patreon episode?
Yeah, we can probably just announce it, right?
Yeah, we're going to do our top 10 first time watches in 2024. Not movies that came out in 2024, just first time watches, discoveries in 2024.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Our favorite 2024 discoveries.
Yeah. This is my number
list
one.
Was very easy to make.
I was going to say this one I'm going to just briefly mention now because I have to bring it up because you need to watch this, Sam. Like I think you would love it. This is my number one. So spoilers for my list. You'll have to listen
for our Patreon episode that we haven't even recorded yet.
Yeah, for the Patreon episode. You'll have to listen for my number 10 through 2, I guess. But my number one favorite discovery of 2024 was American Movie, the documentary about the making of Coven, not Coven, Coven, which is the making of this Wisconsin short film, feature film. He couldn't quite decide. It's about director Mark Borchardt, who was this cinephile during the 90s who really wanted to take that same Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez model of, hey, I'm going to shoot this film on film and we're going to find distributors through film festivals. And I'm going to be the next Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino, but I'm from Wisconsin. But he just never finishes any of these movies that he starts making. And it's all about the creative process, about believing this is your life's work and your life's mission is to make movies, but it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It has a great story of Mark, who's the director, who's kind of a little bit of an egomaniac. He's very full of himself and
have to be a director.
You have to be. And his friend Mike is one of my favorite. He feels like a movie character. Mike and Mark feel like movie characters, but it's just them in real life. It's insane how much these two are movie characters in a documentary. But Mike is like this burnout who takes a bunch of drugs and is drunk all the time. But he's the only guy that will help Mark on all of his movies. And he's always the first one that shows up and sometimes the only one that shows up to help him on his movies. And it's such a great friendship movie. It's a great movie about the creative process. It's a great movie about making movies. I loved American Movie. Highly recommend it. I'm bringing it up on a horror podcast because he's trying to make a horror movie, Coven. So that's the premise of the movie. Highly recommend it if you're behind on the times like I am to watch American Movie.
Never even heard of it. So
really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard of it, but until you started talking to me about it, and I saw your Letterboxd review of it, I'm like, shit. Yeah, so I do have to check this out.
Yeah, I've heard about this movie for a long time. It's many people consider it the best movie about making movies.
I mean, I'm in. I love movies about making movies, so I'm sure that I will enjoy this.
You're gonna love this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the funniest movies ever made, and it's a documentary.
It's a documentary. That's awesome.
Insane, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sam, what about you? What have you been doing?
Well, aside from The Devil's Bath, which I held off because we were seeing it at the State, might have made my top 10 had we watched it prior to that episode, if I'm being honest. Just had to add that in. Devil's Bath, Round the Decay. I watched Strange Darling in the prep for our top 10 list, and it didn't make my top 10 list. I liked this movie. I didn't love it. Think it's a little long for what it is. I think the nonlinear storytelling feels more like a gimmick than an organic storytelling Tool, but the two lead performances are fucking fantastic. Like Willa Fitzgerald is on another level in this movie. Kyle Gallner is, I mean, he's incredible in everything. He gets a lot to work with here. Um, go into this movie knowing as little as possible. Don't even read the like 1 sentence blurb that's on every streaming service for it. Like, because if you go in expecting anything, you're going to guess what this movie is from the get-go. And it's not that it diminishes enjoyment. I'm not going to say anything on Strange Darling. I liked it. I didn't love it. It's trying a little hard to be Tarantino, but it also has some really effective, cool set pieces in it. And it's been topping it's been in a lot of people's top 10 lists for horror. Yeah, it's good. Check it out. Just maybe go in with, I was expecting something revelatory and I just didn't get that. So
the internet's like everything's the best thing ever, it's the worst thing. Like there's no middle ground anymore.
I think when I rewatch this in the future, I might like it more removed from the hype, because I think the hype had me expecting something that was more groundbreaking than what this was. And it's not groundbreaking. It plays a lot of the same beats you've seen in other movies. It just plays them really well. Like it's a very well-made film. So yeah, Strange Darling, check it out. I don't know if this one would have made my top 10 list had I watched it before, but I haven't stopped giggling or laughing about this movie since I watched it. I finally got around to Kyle Mooney's Y2K, his comedy horror, definitely comedy first, horror second, about two teen boys who crash a party on New Year's Eve 1999. And when midnight hits, Y2K happens and the robots take over, the appliances take over. This has some great Weta workshop. They designed the robots, the killer robots that are made of all these like homemade appliances, and like it's ridiculous. It's a very goofy movie. I feel like everybody on the internet has already spoiled this. So spoilers for Y2K is in this movie. It's not just a cameo. Fred Durst is in this movie. And it's fantastic.
As himself, right?
As himself. Yeah. He plays an integral role to this whole thing. And the cast is great. I don't think I laughed harder at any 2024 movie than I did Y2K. If you like Kyle Mooney's brand of comedy, and I did because I grew up watching him on SNL, this movie is amazing. He has like a role himself in this movie as the stoner video store clerk with white guy dreads. And yeah, this is a beers and bong rips type of movie for sure. I think if you watch it sober, you're going to be like, what the fuck is this? I think if you have a libation or a little herbal supplement,
a little Turp Boys.
Yeah. I think that you're going to have a blast with Y2K. There's some tonal inconsistencies, and like there's a scene where like the two main boys like get into a fight just out of nowhere, and they just say really mean shit about each other, and then 5 minutes later like one of them just apologizes and they move on, and I'm like, what did we even do that for then? Like there's little things like that. I think if this wasn't an A24 movie, it might be getting better reception than what it is, because it is just kind of a goofy stoner comedy with some horror in it. And I don't think that's what most people expect these days from A24.
Yeah. No.
But I would like to bring up the movie Slice, which was definitely a goofy stoner comedy first and a horror movie second, and that movie rules, and that was also an A24 movie. So we're not in like completely unprecedented waters here. So Y2K, gets a high recommendation. And then ending on 2 movies. I should have ended on Y2K. Over the Christmas holidays, I have my list of Christmas movies that I watch. I didn't get to all of them this year, but the 2 horrors that I did end up watching were the original Black Christmas and Krampus. I did not get to Christmas Bloody Christmas this year, but that's okay because you know what? I might just watch it in January anyways because that movie fucks. So
Yeah, this year was a weird year for watching. I didn't get to a lot of my like usual staples of
yeah,
Christmas rewatches for some reason. I don't know.
yeah, weird. Like
I
I
also
don't
went
know.
hard last year, like watched everything. So like
Yeah,
maybe I was burnt out from that. I don't know.
I think that's kind of so. I got COVID over the holidays last year, and that's all I did was watch movies.
Yeah,
And this year I was able to do
you
other
were
things,
alive.
and so I
Yeah.
think I was baking cookies and decorating and doing all that other stuff. Whereas like a year ago, I was in my bed not moving. So yeah, that's what I've been doobie doing, and that's the episode, folks.
All
Yay!
right. See you later. Bye. No.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that's yeah. Some good stuff. Catching up on our movies from the holidays. Some of our end of year watches. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a fun year of horror going forward, and we'll be kicking things off with oh, what do you got?
Also, I always forget books because I don't have a good book list. I read Clay McLeod Chapman, a friend of friend of our sister show, Clay McLeod Chapman. I read his new book, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. The audiobook has insane production value. It's very political, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on. You might get pretty offended by this book. Just gonna say it. But holy shit, this book is insane. There are like cannibalistic zombie orgies, and you may be thinking like cannibalistic zombie, isn't that like an oxymoron or not oxymoron? Redundant? No, it's not. There's cannibalism, zombies eating each other while they're all fucking in this movie. Like it's insane. This book rules, and it was my first read of 2025. Couldn't have picked a better book to start my the new year off with. So everybody, go read "Wake Up and Open Your Eyes" by Clay McLeod Chapman. That's what I'm ending my doobie doing on.
There you go. There you go. Well, we're going to end this podcast off on. There's a couple places you can find us. One of the things we mentioned in our doobie doing is our Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/screams from the basement, capital S, capital B, and screams from the basement. Sign up for a $1 or a $5 tiers there. $1 tier, you get an exclusive print of both Sam and I, and you get a monthly newsletter. Sam's got that print. Look at that. Look at that. That's a beautiful. It's us as the kids from the beginning of Casper, but as ghosts.
Twitty.
If you sign up for the $5 tier, though, you get written reviews from Sam. You get behind the scenes vlogs of the room behind me, my
The
home
Casey
office,
Cave.
Casey's Cave, and then you also get a monthly bonus episode. And like Sam said, we're going to be doing our top 10 horror or just general. I guess with that, we'll leave that as a surprise because we haven't
I
decided.
kept mine to horror because if
Okay.
we open it up outside of horror, my whole list blows up.
Yeah, I have no idea. So we'll do our top 10 horror discoveries of 2024 as our Patreon bonus episode. So again, $5 tier on that, just $5 a month. It's less than a coffee from Starbucks to help out your friendly neighborhood Screens from the Basement pod. Sam, where can they find us on social media?
You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and until Sunday, you can still find us on TikTok.
Sure, I don't know. You probably won't, but
Probably not. We're not going to post anything else on there. But
yeah, I think we're done with it.
any of those other ones, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, check us out.
Yeah.
Give us a follow, notifications if you can. It's getting really hard to break through all the noise on these social media apps anymore. So any little bit helps.
Yeah, and if you like this podcast, share it out with your friends. Just
Yeah.
share it on whatever social media platform you use and say, "Hey, I like this show. These guys know what they're talking about."
Yeah. Even though we don't.
We don't, but sometimes they do. I don't know, but
Sometimes we do. No, we know what we're talking about.
we know ball.
We know
We
ball.
we know
We,
ball. Yeah.
we know ball.
That's all you got to say. Like, post on your Facebook page, be like, the Basement Boys know ball, and people will know what that means.
Singular ball, though, not balls.
Well, we know that too.
We do.
You can find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. Give us a subscribe on all of those, and like, rate, review, do all those fun things. And again, just help support the podcast any way you can. You guys know how this works.
Don't fuck up our current 5-star rating on Spotify. Keep that shit going.
Yeah, keep it at 5 stars, and then drop us a comment and a rating and say we know ball, or that we don't know ball, but leave it at that 5 stars. That's fine too. And Sam, I think the last thing we need to plug here. Oh, hey, 2 more things to plug. Sorry. One of them is our TeePublic store. You can buy exclusive shirts like the one Sam is wearing right now for watching us on YouTube. We'll be putting up some more designs here in the new year. We got some cool things planned for the TeePublic store. Again, just go to our social media pages and you'll find a link to our TeePublic store there. But Sam, the last thing we got to plug, and we got to probably start pumping this out on every episode.
Is
our
it
big
the
event,
Screams by Night Con?
Our Screams by Night Con, coming up April 26th. That is a Saturday in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Social. Be there or be square.
Yeah.
Well, you can be square and be there too, I guess. But yeah, we're gonna have a bunch of
I'm
vendors.
A square and I'll be there.
Sam's a square and he'll be there. SpongeBob might be there with his square pants too. Who knows? But we will have a bunch of horror guests, horror vendors, food trucks, panels, all the fun things you would expect from the giant halfway to Halloween event like this. So again, Screams by Night, just look for that on our social media platforms, and you can find info to buy your tickets there. Please pre-purchase? Just purchase, I guess.
Yeah, I guess just purchase.
Just purchase your tickets in advance.
Yeah, if you purchase your tickets in advance, it helps us gauge interest, how many people are going to be there, and B, it helps us monetarily get this thing off the ground, because Casey, John, and I, we're putting our own stuff behind this. We're putting it out there, and any little bit helps. So
yeah, our skin's in the game, and if you guys help us out, that means we can keep pushing more cool horror stuff happening at this event. So again, Screams by Night, halfway to Halloween Con, April 26th, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Social in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Tickets available now, $10 only, get you in for the whole day. We have some awesome and incredible vendors. You guys are going to love this event, so be on the lookout for more announcements soon.
Yeah, we're working on some things behind the scenes that might turn some heads. So get your tickets now.
It might. All right, Sam. I think that's it for this episode. Why don't you go ahead and give us the sign off?
All right, everybody. As always, thanks for tuning in, and sweet screams.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal: providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.